Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. I am pumped up today to have two executives from one of my favorite tech companies. Today, I have Rushang Shaw, Chief Marketing Officer with Hawksoft, and Sean Hawkins, co-founder and VP of Development of Hawksoft. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited to be here.
Thank you very much for being here. I am excited to get to know you both a little bit better, learn about your stories, and hear more about Hawksoft and just more about the tech space, management system space in general. So I think most might know the Hawksoft story, which is a phenomenal story. I know I've heard Paul Hawkins refer to it as the American dream, which it truly, truly is. So why don't you just give us a brief background of how Hawksoft was originated, and we'll start from there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll jump in here. So it actually goes back to when I was in the fifth grade. My dad, my teacher, inspired my dad to buy a computer. It was a Tandy 1000. But he told my dad, don't give me any games. And so my dad, he bought me a computer, said, you can have any game you want, but you have to program it yourself. And he handed me a programming book. And that was GW Basic. And this is back in 1984. So the IBM PC had just come out a couple of years earlier. It was very, very early days of the PC, the PC world, if you will. I'd come home from school and I'd learned to, program, and then when my dad got home, I'd teach him what I learned, and then he'd come home and he learned a bunch of stuff and stay up really late, and the next day he'd teach me what he learned, and we went back and forth teaching each other to program. And the first games were like a tic-tac-toe game or a hangman game or whatever it might be. And my dad was interested in building a recipe program for my mom, and different like a check register and genealogy program or whatnot. Fast forward to sixth grade, my dad went to work for a cheese distribution company. They imported cheeses from all over the world. He eventually became the night warehouse manager. And they had a warehouse that was about 20,000 square feet, filled of cheeses and meats from all over the world. Their computer system told them where the cheeses and meats were, but rather how much of each product they had, but not where in the warehouse it was. And so you'd always rotate the cheese out in the right order, and you'd literally do it by look. You have to walk around and go, okay, that looks like it's the oldest pallet of this type of cheese. Nope, that one is. And every once in a while, you'd walk into the cooler, and there'd be this horrible smell where a whole pallet of cheese would be rotated incorrectly, and a whole pallet of Brie from France, for instance, would go bad. At this point, I'm in the ninth grade, and he comes home and he's like, Sean, I've got a program I want you to build. And he outlined what it was, and essentially it was how to track where all of these pallets of cheese were in this warehouse. And I built it. It took quite a while. He took it to his boss, and his boss was blown away. His boss said they just had it bid out. It was going to cost way too much money. Our program did more than they even had thought of, and they wanted to pay us for that program. And so he brought home a sizable check. And at that point, I said, Dad, there's something here. There's something here. I think we should, someday we're going to be partners in our own business, and we're going to call it Hawksoft. And so as a very geeky ninth grader, I carried around a little book, a notebook with a hawk on it, with the word Hawksoft on it. I thought it was cool stuff. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I don't understand why. Whatever. And so that's kind of where the dream started. Fast forward to my senior year, my dad became an insurance agent. Again, he came home and said, Sean, we've got a problem. And the problem was really his handwriting. If anyone's ever seen Paul's handwriting, you can't read it for nothing, still to this day. And so he wanted, this was back in the day of handwritten insurance applications. He wanted a way to print these out on laser printers. And this was, the LaserJet, HP LaserJet 3 had just come out. It was brand new technology, very few apps written for it. And so I had been working in high school for a company that was actually using that technology, and we took it to my boss, and my boss said, I don't want any part of that. If you and your dad want to go do that, go do it. And so we did, and we started building this software for his agency. And that was our first product called AppWriter. It was originally for his agency. Some of the insurance companies started getting these applications in, and it was their app. I mean, it looked just like their app, but it was completely filled out. None of the fields were missing. There was no misspellings. It was something they'd never seen before, and they were very curious on how we were doing that, and wanted to start having their other agencies use that. And so suddenly, this is back in 1995, and they introduced us some other agencies, and we found ourselves in the software business. And so it was a start of a dream that come true.
So from there, you had App Writer, and your dad went to this meeting in Seattle, and because your apps were so much better than what were being handed in, and you went to this meeting, or this agent meeting, signed up three other agencies from there, who I understand are still with Hawksoft to this day.
We have three of the top of the first four.
Okay,
are still. Yep.
So, which is amazing in itself. And I want to backtrack just a second. So when from the owner of the cheese company, which gave you, as I understand it, a 5-figure check as a 14 or 15-year-old. First of all, he could have given you $500, and you would have been like, "Holy shit!"
Yes. yeah.
That must have been crazy.
Yeah.
As somebody, 14 or 15, whatever you were, you must have. I love it that you called it right there and said, "We're going to name it Hawksoft," and it stuck. That's brilliant, and I love it. And you sounds like you already made the logo at that point. So I want to hear how it evolved from your first 3 customers from App Writer into Hawksoft, into a management system.
Yeah, it was we were paired with a rater up in Seattle called Multico, and they were our App Writer worked in conjunction with their rater. And that's kind of originally that's as far as we wanted to take it. But in the agency where Paul was working, they were using now one of our competitors. We won't name who, but anyway, they were using one of our competitors. And at the time, we were having a lot of network hiccups. And they would have an issue where there was a network hiccup, and it would corrupt the database, and they were constantly having to be down for several days while they fixed the database. And my dad was like, "This is ridiculous. We have another way of solving this." And so that's when he had the idea of building the management system. And so we built it again for his agency. And it was interesting because he was the one that actually originally built the original one for his agency. I was off on a mission for my church and then off at school. And I came home and continued, with the family business. But I said, "Dad, this product right here has something we can do with it. We can make this go a lot further." And so that became at that point that became my baby. And that was about 1998. And I said, "You know what, we're gonna just continue expanding on this thing." And so that's when we started adding where we added scanning into it, and we added anyway, it's different things. And so because we already had customers using App Writer, that became we had our own customers we could market to. And that's where we just started introducing it, and they loved it. It was something that that took off fairly quickly. It was in DOS originally. About 2001, we ported it to Windows.
Okay.
And that was fun.
So what did that look like? You had a certain amount of customers. I mean, ballpark. How many customers did you have with App Writer, and then start evolving into the management system piece?
I don't even know. Okay. I couldn't even tell you. It was a pretty small number.
Okay, but it evolved.
So much so that Paul used to go and install, demo all of the customers in person. And then once they signed up, he would return a week later and actually do the install and the training in person with every agency. Wow. And it was just him. So at that time, it was Jason, my brother-in-law Jason, and myself, and my dad, and my mom was the bookkeeper. And my dad ended up he was still working part-time for this agency at that point. And so he would be traveling, half of the week working and half the week traveling to visit agencies. Jason and I were on phone support and building out the app writer and the management system, and we were those were the days. I got married in there, and my wife was always said, "What?" Anyway, yeah, she's like, "Sean, you play too much," because I'd be sitting there with two double monitors watching a movie while I was coding, and those were the days. But anyway,
but I think there's a lot to be said there in what Sean just said about the roots of Hawksoft and success. And what I mean is, it makes a difference when you have someone innovating that comes from the industry and comes from an intimate knowledge of the pains that agents feel. So Paul, working part-time as an agent, he has a visceral feel of the inefficiencies in an agency. And if you look at Hawksoft, one of the seminal features in Hawksoft, which is essentially the foundation of a lot of workflows, is what we call the action menu. And if you think about the action menu, the roots lie in these inefficiencies that Paul witnessed at this agency, which is, here is how an agent thinks sequentially through processes. And the action menu today is really a reflection of that thought pattern. When I get an incoming phone call or when I get an incoming email, what is the next branch of that logic? That is what built the action menu. And that's what I think it starts forming a fork in the road on how Hawksoft early on in 95 and beyond, how it differentiated itself, where a lot of traditional management systems started as finance packages. How do you handle the trust accounting in an insurance agency? Hawksoft is one of the first management systems to focus on inefficiencies of workflows that agents feel every day. And I think that was an early fork in the road that 1 degree of change leads to a big difference down the road.
Yeah, because he knew them. He knew what the problem areas were.
He felt it.
Yeah. Yeah, and he knew, and it made sense to him on what the process was going to be. I also, and I'm glad you shared that, because I guess I didn't know that about how Paul did that in the very beginning. That is, at the root of how he wanted his customers to be handled. He didn't just send them this program and say, here's some directions on how to install it. My goodness, he went to their office to install it and then came back and walked through it with them.
And to this day, and this is where Paul is just an incredible individual. To this day, when he's traveling for a vacation or whatever, he'll just stop in an agency. In fact, he was recently visiting my aunt in Virginia, and he just looked up that morning and said, "Hey, I wonder if we have an agency in this town." And he's like, "Oh, yes, sure enough, we do. I didn't know we did." So he went. Well, he didn't realize that they had literally signed up for us like 2 days earlier. And he was popping in to introduce himself and see how things were going. And of course, they weren't even on our product yet. But that's something that he has always done is just, he wants to be in touch. He wants to be to talk with people, to see what their pain points are, to be with them.
Hands-on, taking care of customers, and that trickles down for sure to this day. Of taking care of customers. That's incredible. At what point, and just for either of you, at what point did you kind of decide, I think we have something here. Like this is something that could blow up or grow.
I think we're still waiting to see if that's the case.
we're the oldest startup. We're trying to figure out product market fit 28 years into it.
I say that because it was never really a aha. I mean, the aha moment was really way back early on, but it's just evolved over time. It's not been this we're going to go and take the world by storm. It's just, let's solve one problem at a time and let's see where it goes. And it's been that organic growth that way,
which I think transitions well to what Rushang was just talking a little bit about before we jumped on, about scaling and growing at a moderate pace and trying to grow the right way. Rushang, can you touch on that?
Yeah, we are very sensitive to not just growth, which I think every organization is sensitive to, but more importantly, how we grow. And about 7-8 years ago, we had a fork in the road where we had to decide what is going to be our operating system, modus operandi, for how Hawksoft continues to grow. Because we were at a place where we were about 50 to 60 employees, and there were a lot of opportunities coming in the door, and we knew within 3-4 years we're probably going to double the employee count. And so it's not a question of what the right method is, but it's a question of what is it that we, Hawksoft, want, and what controls do we want, and what are we willing to let go. And so do we accept, for example, outside money, which allows us to grow very rapidly and have this hockey stick growth that we always use that analogy, hockey stick growth? Or do we not accept outside money and instead grow a little bit more organically and slowly, but also in a manner that allows us to control how we grow, who we hire, be more methodical in that, and maintain the culture and ethos that Hawksoft was started with? And we chose unanimously on the organic, slower growth pattern, because what was important, again, it's not right, but it's right to us. What was important to us is that we retain the culture, the people first attitude, and hiring good people. We're spending 8-10 hours a day of our lives with these people. We want to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with people that see the world in a similar way. And it's just a joy and a pleasure to be around. So that's what we chose. And looking back, we couldn't have made a better decision.
Yeah. It's a good segue into one of my other thoughts that I had, which is I'm going to touch on some of your core values. Sense of community. These aren't all of them. Sense of community, doing the right thing, delivering an exceptional experience, which as a Hawksoft user, as a happy Hawksoft user, I don't feel like these are just, this is just lip service. I see this, I feel this when I talk to Woody in customer service, or Matthew, I might say his name wrong, Brewer, at the Hug Group, Paul Moyos, probably said his name wrong too. These are people with passion that exemplify this to me. I mean, and it's amazing. And I think that's why, as I was saying off camera, that people are passionate about Hawksoft as a company, because you don't just use, these aren't just key words. They are core values that your company buys into. I think it's so impressive.
I think it's important that there are two things. One is that core values come from the top.
Yeah.
If the top is not willing to live and push those core values, it doesn't matter how much the organization pushes it. It's never gonna go anywhere. And I think that's where one of the things that we have done with all of our employees, we have what's called a core value meeting, and every new employee goes to the core value meeting. And that meeting, we have 10 people on our executive team. We have our whole executive team there, and we've had it where we've only had 2 new employees with 10 members of the executive team in that core value meeting for an hour. And all we discuss is our core values. We go through all of our core values. We discuss them. We share experiences about how how that core value applies to our business and how it applies to us as individuals. And we ask them that while they're at Hawksoft to live those core values. Yeah. And it's amazing because so many times we get out of that meeting and they're like, wow, I can tell that you guys feel strongly. A lot of times the business will say we've got core values, but they don't live them. And that's something that yes. We always say that we answer our core values answers all the questions. And there's been many times where we've had some passionate conversations in an executive meeting. And when it comes down to it, we stop and say, well, wait a minute. This core value says that this is the path we have to take, even though it's not the most comfortable.
I think therein lies the key, to echo what Sean said. The importance of the core values is set from day one on new employees. That's a very expensive meeting with 10 executives, and when sometimes you only have 2 new employees, but it sends a signal on how important getting off on the right foot with a new employee is, and frankly, us meeting them as people. Right? Yeah. We want to know who these people are as we scale, and that becomes harder to do the more people you have at a company. So it really reinforces that sentiment. And I think what's really made the difference, where the rubber meets the road, is like what Sean said. We actually bring these core values to decisions we make. They aren't words on a wall or a web page. We're applying them and we're using them as a North Star in the decision making we're doing. And there's been many situations where we came to a decision, and then when you apply the filter of core values on top of that, we had to rethink that decision and we went a different route.
So this might not be a question for either of you, but as a fellow business owner, I'd like to know for myself, what does the hiring process look like? Because it must be something that you really have to strongly vet out, and they have to meet these values. Because if you hire somebody in customer service that isn't bought in, it's affecting your customer base, right?
And it's not to say we don't end up hiring people sometimes that don't fit.
Right.
But the beautiful part is because the culture is so strong, people self-select. They say, you know what, I'm not a good fit here. And we've had a number of those over the years. But we've also had a number of people who we've hired who maybe weren't the best fit, but they've changed because they start seeing, wait a minute, this is a better way. This is a better way of doing business, because it's about people. It's about we're not vying for position, if you will. We're not trying to outdo the person next to me, in the seat next to me. We're truly a team working together, and so it's been pretty incredible.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to pivot a little bit. We'll get a little bit techie. Might make Sean happy. You've your next big platform coming out is Hawksoft 6. Tell us what that's about and how that's going to make the agency force more efficient and a little bit better, a little easier for us to work in.
Yeah, so Hawksoft 6 is really my screen keeps going black on me here. Okay, Hawksoft 6 is really about moving where our data is stored. Today, our Hawksoft 5, our data is a network-based. We store the data essentially on the network, and it's not using a traditional database. It's using a database that we actually developed ourselves, a database engine that we developed ourselves back in 1999 or whatever it was, in the DOS, 1998 in the DOS days. And Hawksoft 6 is really about changing out that whole data layer so that the data can live in the cloud, and using modern technologies for storing and moving that data. That's from a very technical standpoint. Mm-hmm. What does it do for the agency? The bottom line is what it does to the agency is that Hawksoft 6 no longer needs this whole remote experience, remote desktop experience, to be able to provide the software for the agency. It's able to, through both a combination of a native app and also browser technology, be able to provide that functionality for the agencies right on their desktop. And Rushang, you could probably say it a lot better than I can.
No, I think that's spot on. And honestly, in the long term, it gives us a more modern stack. That's a benefit to Hawksoft. But where it matters to agencies is because we're working on a modern tech stack, we are going to be able to innovate a lot faster than we ever did in the past. And not only that, it's a lot easier to find talent, really good talent, that understands this modern tech stack. Yeah. Because as time goes on, the people that knew the old tech stack retire, and so it just becomes that much more difficult. So we're already seeing it. I mean, those people that were at Hub, our user group national conference, they got a sneak peek into Hawksoft 6. Amazing feedback by them. A lot of the workflows and screens were redesigned. A lot of the inefficiencies removed, and we're doing this at breakneck speed. So we're really excited because we're coming to the battle with the right tools.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard from a lot of my fellow agents that might have been a little bit impatient, and why is this taking so long?
Right.
Can you touch on that? It's a little bit of the complexities of what it's like to change a program like this, and why you can't just switch it over and run on a new system.
Yeah. So Um, I've used the analogy in the past. It's like flying a Cessna single engine airplane, and you've got 2 passengers on board, and you decide that you want to make this into a fighter jet, or to a big passenger 747 while you're flying it without landing it, and that's essentially what we're doing.
Yeah.
It is rebuilding the whole infrastructure from the ground up. There are the 5X version 5, version 5.6 is the current version that's out there. Version 5.6 is built on 25 almost 25 years of innovation, just continuous. And in 25 years, there's simply just a lot of code there. In order to replace that code, in order to move it to the cloud, we had to rewrite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And having to change, not only that, most of it was written in C++. We're now using more modern languages, C#, SQL on the back end, using web APIs. And so there's a lot of having to just move code from one language to another also takes time. And the other thing is we wanted to do is not just rewrite it and get you exactly what you had, but actually make innovations while we were rewriting it. And so one of the big systems that we are just finishing up on, literally just like it's within a day or two away, is the whole download system. And it is by far the largest system in the management system, is processing downloads. And it has been redesigned from the ground up, just like trust accounting was redesigned from the ground up. Reporting was. So there's just a lot of systems that have been redesigned, and part of that is because the efficiencies that we get as we rewrite them as well. So,
and I think there's something to be said about the decision we made as we embarked on this journey a few years ago. Cloud. Again, I'll use the fork in the road example. We had a decision of whether we use the same resources, the same team and talent to build this new system versus hire an entirely separate team and build a brand new product. And the North Star there was really our customers. We, on the receiving end, when we invest in a company and a software tool, one of the things we don't like at all is when that same company builds a separate product and then now has a way to sell you an entirely new management system. And now you have to relearn everything, the processes, workflows. It's a different billing model, often more expensive. So it's just a separate product. We didn't want to do that to our customers. Again, with this people first mentality, we put them at the forefront. How would they feel if they've trained their staff for decades on certain workflows and all of a sudden we pull the rug and sell them something brand new? So we decided to use the same team that has all this intimate knowledge over the years to build this new product, this new platform that's in the cloud. The irony is that you're getting the efficiencies of your existing platform in this, and the places where we got a lot of feedback that needed a lot of change. Accounting is a great example where we had to redo a lot of processes to eliminate the efficiencies. We're addressing those while we make this change. So you're not going to have to go to your agency and say you're going to have to learn an entirely new product.
Yeah,
the framework is still the same.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah,
a lot of moving parts. So what are some of the enhancements on the new program on this fighter jet?
Let's just take today we have suspenses. Suspense has been rewritten. We're actually calling them tasks now, but a couple of the benefits of tasks is that now you can assign a task to more than one agent. You can assign it so that either agent can close out the task, or you can assign it that both agents have to close out the task. And tasks don't have to be limited to a client. You can actually give a task to one of your producers and says, "Hey, I need you to go take care of training in this area. Have nothing to do with a particular client." So tasks are completely they are linked. You can link them to clients, but they don't have to be.
I love that.
Let's jump reporting really quick. For these large agencies, we've got agencies with 300,000 clients in their database. Those reports take a long time to run in 5X. 6X, they are extremely fast. And that's the biggest thing with reporting is just the speed that the reports come in. The downloads in the past with 5X, downloads are managed. You still have to go do a process every day with downloads to process the downloads. In 6X, they are completely done for you. I mean, it processes downloads on their own. It just happens all day long, every day. There's nothing you have to do for those downloads to come in. They just work. So big efficiencies there. We've also solved some of the issues with on the downloads, not only the downloads, but in the past, an auto and a home policy in 5X have to be two separate policies. Or a better example, your property and business auto has to be two separate policies in 5X. In 6X, they don't. You can have your true commercial package with your property, your CGL, your business auto all on the same policy, and your downloads will update them accordingly as well. So huge update in that way as well. What am I missing?
I mean, there's things that are not on day one that are going to be apparent, but they're going to make drastic changes down the road. So, for example, the screens that are in the new platform, they're all built on browser technology. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is, even though the desktop, someone who's sitting in front of a desktop for 8 hours a day, they're going to actually want a dedicated app, the Hawksoft app, running on their Windows PC, because that gives them tremendous power in terms of shortcuts, drag and drop, things like that. But because they're browser-based technology on the back end, we're going to be able to port a lot of these, and some of them will be available on day one, but we're going to be able to have browser-based screens that you can access from any mobile device. So that jump to that world is going to be much shorter than what it was in the past, because just the fundamental technology behind the new app is browser technology.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. So what you referenced was to make improvements going forward, because you're on new innovation, it's going to be that much quicker.
Exactly. One of the examples we use, a practical example and use case, is if I'm an agency owner, I want to be able to wake up in the morning and quickly get a pulse on what's going on in my agency. What are my tasks? What are the crises? Who needs to be renewed? Who do I need to talk to? I want to be able to do that when I slide out of bed and look at my phone. I don't want to go to my laptop and have to start up Hawksoft and take a look in the desktop app. So all of these things by role,
huge.
Agency owner, office manager, you got your producers, your bookkeepers. We're looking at that to make that browser based as we progress in this.
And the biggest feature, obviously, is getting rid of that remote app experience, getting it so that it's running right on your PC. You're not having to remote into one of our data centers and the app being brought back through that remote app experience. So that experience is much more streamlined.
The tasks piece, I think, is massive, because that helps me as an agency owner to delegate. We do a lot of delegating as an owner. If I can do that on my phone and do it on one the more we can have one platform, the better. Yeah. Right. And if that's something that we eliminate, I mean, we use a lot of different programs, kind of duct tape them together, to try and find these efficient solutions. That helps on one of those. Mm-hmm. We use Slack as a inter-office communication. It's not the best for long-term. That's, good for quick messaging. But if I want to I tried to, when we took over with Hawksoft, we did all of our delegating then on suspenses, and which was a great platform. It was in one place. That's where we started. But now I love that feature that we can delegate just a task to someone else. If I want to send a message to my office manager, say, hey, can you check on this? It's in one location. It's done. It's checked off. That's beautiful.
The other my favorite feature of this is that you go on vacation, and what do you do today? With 6X, what you do is you say, hey, I'm going to take all my tasks that are due next week, and I'm going to add this other person in my office is going to take care of them for me. I add them to all my tasks. And so now I'm still on those tasks, but now say Rushang is on those tasks now too. So while I'm away, I know that he's going to be able to take care of my tasks. So I can delegate those tasks out for certain time periods, which is kind of cool too.
I love it. I'm excited for it. Sean, when this is fully released, how long of a vacation are you going to take? Because you've probably been working on this for 4 years straight. Great work. I'm excited for it. Sean, I have a question for you. We spoke a little beforehand about the evolution of the company, and you've been at this now for nearly 27 years. And, you know, we've talked, you were, you know, you were the programmer and the behind the scenes guy. Talk a little bit about how your role has evolved into this, you know, now that you've grown into this, you know, much larger business.
You know, it's interesting is that in the last year, my role has reverted just a little bit. So I'll share that experience too. But if you go back 12, 15 years, I was the sole developer on the management system. If it was in there, I was the one coding it. We brought on about 11, 12 years ago, we brought on the first developers. Those developers are still with us, which is kind of cool. And they, one of the concerns that I heard developers say early on is, are you going to be okay someone taking over your baby? And I'm like, yeah, please take it over.
But were you? It's one thing to say that, but when you put your heart and soul into it, it's not always that easy.
It's not always that easy. And you're right. In the sense of people coding, I don't have an issue. I still maintain that role of chief product officer, in that I want to make sure that there are certain things I feel very passionate about of how the program should work, and I maintain that role for that reason. But it really is. We learn from every developer I hire. I tell them, I say, here's the thing. You bring your experience from all the places you've worked in the past, and that's so valuable to us, because I didn't go to school. I mean, I did, but I didn't finish school for development. Most of it is self-taught. Most of my development is self-taught, and so I learn from every developer we bring in. They bring, hey, what about doing it this way? That's a great idea. Let's incorporate that. And so many of our development team have brought in things that they have learned from past jobs that have helped Hawksoft evolve because of their ideas and their thoughts. And I think it's really just important that to keep that open mindset. Anyway.
Yeah. So how have you gone from programmer to more of a company type role?
Yeah, you know, I do spend about probably about a quarter of my time right now working with, whether it's on the executive team or working with different departments. I still end up mainly focusing on development a lot, because that's my kind of my passion. In the last year, I've reverted back to doing a lot more development, only because we are need all hands on deck, and I'm like, well, I've got some skills. Let's do this. And so, but it's about that personal growth and seeing where we can. I don't know. It's interesting, because if I look back at where I was, say 10, 12 years ago, the idea of sitting and talking this podcast would never have happened. It'd be like, right. Just not happening. It doesn't bother me anymore. And part of that, I think, is because I do spend a lot of time. One of the things that instead of doing a lot of coding, I also spend a lot of time working with our product owners and really hashing out details of how things should work. I spend a lot of time doing presentations, whether it's to the developers, whether it's to the product owners, whether it's to the companies at large, of what we're rolling out or what we're proposing to roll out, that kind of thing. And so I spend a lot of time doing a lot more presentations than I ever have in the past, which has been awesome.
And I think one of the superpowers that Sean has, I think he's way too humble to admit, the lens that he brings to new innovation. So let's pick on Task Center, which is brand new in Hawksoft 6. Hawksoft became famous and still is for the efficiencies of workflows.
Yeah.
The difference between 3 or 4 clicks and 2 clicks, that matters to us. And there's a lot of discussion and debate, and sometimes heated argument, that goes into reducing that by 2 clicks. That's a perspective I think Sean does bring, because Hawksoft has always been very efficient. We like to say all your data is within 3 or 4 clicks. You don't have to go through multiple screens, 1,000 menus to get to where you want to. Yeah. And so that perspective in any innovation that we put forward that Sean is the person at the table, the seat at the table that represents the customer, or in our case, the agency and the staff, and the questions that they're asking. Why do I have to do this? Why is this 3 clicks? Why can't that be easier? Those are the difficult discussions we're having now as we innovate in the product.
So, and this is for either of you. Do you have your sights on? I know this is just being released, but what's next? Like, I have no idea what the future might hold for a management system, or what the improvement might look like. But in your business, it's always moving forward. This never stops, right?
It doesn't, and we've got our ears to the ground. Our customer base is very, very vocal, very plugged in, and
we're needy. You can say it. I'm okay with
totally. Here's a great example. So our user conference, our national conference this year, Hawksoft had 2 general sessions in it. The second general session was an open forum, essentially, where leadership was on the stage and we were taking questions. We did an audience poll, and the features and the needs that the audience pulled themselves that floated to the top, we decided to dive deep on those. And we asked questions of the audience. These are like 400 people, 450 people in the audience. And we asked people to come up to the mic and tell us more. I thought it was very symbolic, that general session too, because that has been the secret sauce of Hawksoft for the last 28 years. It's putting a product out there, putting a feature out there, putting a solution out there, then listening. What are people saying? What do they like? What do they dislike? And then we're going to go back to the drawing board and innovate on that. And it was really symbolic to me that even 28 years into this experiment, we haven't gotten too big for our own pants to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Our roadmap is dictated in large part by what we're hearing from our customers, and we're making an effort to go out and listen to them. We go to about 70 or 80 trade shows a year, and I would estimate about half the traffic to our booth is existing customers that just want to come up and talk to us.
Yeah,
and that's where we do a lot of this innovation. So you have a good question. What's coming? We don't know. It's a guess, just like us. Just as you're looking at it. But there's a lot of innovation in what you're saying, automating. There's a lot of rich data in Hawksoft. How do you automate this? How do you intelligently automate it so the time that humans are spending is more productive in building relationships? One of the things we like to say, in the last 15, 20 years, what's really changed in the insurance industry is that tech has taken over. It's pushed things forward. But one thing that we're really mindful about is we don't want to build tech that replaces real relationships.
No.
Tech should augment that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We're just excited. We're just really excited to get Hawksoft 6 out, so that we've got all kinds of ideas of things to do, and Hawksoft 6 right now is the priority.
Yeah.
Once Hawksoft 6 is out, there's all kinds of things that we're looking at right now. So anyway,
I can't wait. You mentioned your all your conventions and events that you go to. Something that's been appearing so much more is this purple cow, which seems it's getting a lot of play on social media. So tell us what's behind the purple cow.
Purple cow is an interesting story. So my background is in engineering. I got a computer engineering degree as my undergrad, and then went over to the MBA track. And I really struggled with the MBA track because a lot of it, to me, coming from an engineering track, was, I'll be honest, like smoke and mirrors. And I like data. I like things that are more tangible, numbers. And I was really seeking for inspiration of people who've gone down the same road, gone from technical and into business, but that could tie in the technical aspect. So a gentleman by the name of Seth Godin, who's probably really well known now, I came across his books, and one of his books was called The Purple Cow. And short book, the premise is really simple, but the analogy he uses is if you're driving down the road, country road, on a Sunday afternoon, you're going to drive by many different types of animals along the way, farms. You see cows of normal shapes and sizes. You're not going to stop. There's nothing new about that. But if you saw a cow that was purple, you'd pull off on the side of the road, get out your camera, take a picture, get out your phone, take a picture, share it with everyone on social media. Why? Because it's remarkable in the truest sense of the word, worthy of making a remark about. And that really is the premise of Purple Cow. What Seth was trying to say is, in any product or service that you're building or crafting or innovating, how do you build that Purple Cow effect? How do you make it such that it's so awesome, it wows people, that they are willing to go out of their way, pull over on the side of the road, like in the analogy, and make a remark about your product or your service? In our case, we pay attention to both the product and how we treat people, the service that we offer when someone calls in on support. One of our customers a few years ago, what she said really stuck with us. It was the end of the day and she called product support. And from the tone and demeanor of our employee that picked up that phone and got to interact with our customer, her comment was, I couldn't tell that this was their last call in a day or the first. They had the same level of enthusiasm, and they wanted to work with us, even though they were 5 minutes short of getting out the door. And they were willing to stay on the phone as long as it took. That to us is the Purple Cow experience when we're talking about service. So how do you build something remarkable from the ground up, not as an afterthought, but it's built into your product or your service? That's what that is.
I would even argue that to a great extent, you're already there. You know, I mean, like I said, I see it. I feel it. When I was doing my search for a new management system, I learned that customers were passionate about a management system. Who would be passionate about a management system? Why would you be? But they were. I mean, truly passionate. This is the best people. And the service level that I experienced, granted, the service that I had previously was extremely poor. From my perspective, they didn't care if you were there or not. And the very first phone call that I made into Hawksoft was noticeably different. And I thought I'm like, I mean, he thanked me for being a customer, was just pleasant. It might have been witty. And I'm like, they're told to be nice to their customers. You could tell. Mm-hmm. And it was impressive. And that's carried on to this day. So I think a lot of it, and that's why people are so passionate, because they know that you care.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what we talk a lot about this, is that what's remarkable today becomes commonplace tomorrow. And so this Purple Cow experience, we have to continue to innovate on our own Purple Cow experience. We have to continue to innovate on how can we interact with our customers where they feel that we care. So it doesn't become just commonplace. It has to be very intentional. We have to continue to innovate on that.
Yeah, 100% it's intentional. And people are going to have a bad day. Or you're going to have somebody that's fairly new, or you're going to have a bad hire. You're not going to be 100% on your hire. But most of the time, it's fantastic. Question, does the Purple Cow have a name?
Bessie.
No,
yeah, is it Bessie?
It is Bessie.
Okay.
We have two versions of her, at least, and we're actually getting some more made that are miniature. But there's an 8-foot Bessie and there's a 10-foot. So we call the big one Big Bessie. She is, if you've seen Big Bessie at a show, she will make you stop in your tracks. She's that large. I'd be scared confronting her on a dark alley.
So if I could take a second, if we have time,
yeah,
I have a quick story to share about how Purple Cow came about at Hawksoft. So we hired Rushang on, and we gave him a timeline to put together a marketing plan. And he was, at that point, he was the first. We didn't have a marketing department. He was the first. He was the marketing department when we hired him. And so I don't know, was 30, 60, 90 days later, whatever it was, he comes by my office and drops a pamphlet or a booklet that he put together on my desk. And on it, he dropped this little purple cow on my desk. And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You got to read the marketing plan." No, seriously, what is that? He goes, "You got to read the marketing plan." So I'm going through and reading the marketing plan, and it's, I don't know how many pages, it's 50 pages, whatever it is. Yeah. And I'm on page 45 and it still has not said a word about the purple cow. And I finally realized it was like the second to last page is when it finally talked with the purple cow. And I realized it was his way of getting me to read his marketing plan. And it worked.
It comes full circle because I just took my daughter to work. We're all remote now, but I had to go pick up something from the office, which we still have an office there in Canby, Oregon.
Yeah.
And the cows that Sean's talking about, she was 3 years old and she painted them. They were just figurine cows, black and white, and the white parts that she painted when she was 3 years old. And it was awesome seeing the look on her face when she was walking around the office, and like Sean's office we had like 10 executives, 10 executives. They all got one. And it was just awesome to see the look on her face when she saw a few of them had retained it all these years later.
That's awesome.
She felt like she contributed.
Absolutely. I'm going to let you go soon, but that brings me to another question and back to your culture, because your culture is so important. And I have noticed that, a lot of your service people are how remote. How do you keep that culture with a remote workforce? I don't think they're all remote, correct? But
they're all remote at this point.
They are?
We have I think 1 or 2 people in office, but we have 140. What is it today? 147, 148 employees, and we're all remote. It goes back to being very intentional. So we meet as an executive team every week, and what surprises a lot of people is that we talk about the budget maybe once a quarter, maybe once, but most of our time in our executive team, we are talking about people. We're talking about how to make the experience better, whether it's within our teams, whether it's within our departments, across department, with our customers. Those are the conversations that we're having. And so it becomes very intentional. One of the things that we do is we have, we call anniversary lunches. So we get together. We send all of everyone who's having a work anniversary that month. We send them a Grubhub or DoorDash card to get lunch. And then we spend an hour with them and just getting to know them. And it's the executive team with the people having anniversary lunches. And so just things like that. We do a lot of different things like that to keep the culture, because it is challenging. That, in fact, that's one of our biggest topics is working remote. How do we maintain the culture? How do we improve the culture? And it is definitely a challenge.
One of the things we've learned, Brad, in the last 3 years of remote is you have to be very intentional about also building downtime in meetings. We no longer have the luxury of having water cooler chats, things like that. So a lot of departments have gone to a model where they'll have very intentional meetings that are super laser focused, but they'll also budget in some time to just get to know people on their team and just talk about life. What did you watch? How was your weekend? What did you do? What are your kids doing? Things like that. And we're learning in this process that that's a lot more important than we originally thought.
It is. It's very important. I struggle with myself. I have kind of a hybrid model, and then I have some that are flat out remote. And I struggle getting specifically the 100% remote people, keeping them connected.
So one of the challenges that we see on that is that it works if you're 100% on site. It works if you're 100% remote. It's when you've got some people that are on site and some people that are remote that it tends to break down. And that's because the people that are on site interact with each other, and things aren't delayed by that half a second. And they feel, there's some camaraderie when the meeting's over as they walk out and they're kind of jostling each other in the hallway or whatever it is. And you don't get that. And so by going 100% remote, now everyone's on the same playing field. And so it's a hybrid model that makes it challenging. As an insurance agency, that's tough because you kind of have to have a storefront. You have to have some place where people to go to. Or at least, I guess you don't have to, but anyway. So.
No, it's a challenge for many. That makes a lot of sense. So that must have been a decision that you guys made. Do we do 100%? Do we do half and half?
I'll be honest, Brad, we were scared to make that move prior to when I call it the BC era, before COVID. In the BC era, we were scared. We had always talked about it in theory, but we didn't know how to do it. COVID forced it upon us, and we had to go 100% remote. And then we were really tracking on a department-wise basis, is this actually making you more productive? Is it making the employees more happy? Is the work-life balance better without losing productivity focus? And 6, 8 months, 10 months into that experiment, we were astonished by what we learned. Yeah, we tripped and fell in the beginning, and we're learning to do it. We still are, right? Yeah. Everyone does. Yeah. But by and large, we're as productive, if not more. We get the opposite comment sometimes. People don't know when to shut off. We've got people working all hours. And so now we have a little bit of the opposite problem where we got to tell people, no, the lines are blurred between work and home. You need to be more conscious about this. So yeah, we knew about 8, 10 months into this, that this was with the culture that we had and the good people that we hired and surround ourselves with, this was going to work.
Yeah. Great. Gentlemen, kept you a little bit over time here, but again, I want to thank you both for being on today. Wonderful conversation. I got a lot out of it. I think others will too.
Likewise.
So everybody else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. And we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.